Hey, it's Mr. Spencer here. We're going over a plot summary of chapter 71 to 85 to the end of the book, all right? As I go through it with you here, you have all those resources on the It's Learning page. We're in week 6 here, and I'm recording this on November 18th. Okay, you should be reading for this day 5, the last lesson for weeks 5 and 6, up to chapter 74. Page 476. You will need your book. If you don't have your book, don't forget, we have the Children of Blood and Bone folder under resources. I've got this plot summary I'm going over today, and we've also got the audio book and a digital text if you need it. Right? So I've got that there, and you can check out the digital text if you got to pull that up and download it. I've got mine loaded up right there. Okay? It has all the chapters. You can go through them all. Okay? So, back to the summary. Chapter 71. In the last chapter, 70, a girl named Connie, who touched the scroll, uses her new power to knit together the wounds on Zélee's back. And Zélee falls into a deep sleep and encounters Anon in the dreamscape. And they kissed at the end of chapter 70. Zélee awakens now in chapter 71, awash with confused memories of Anon. Saren and the scars on her back. Remember, Saren carved the word maggot onto her back. The girl who healed Zélee enters, smiling brightly. She says that though she healed Zélee's bleeding, she couldn't make the scars on her back disappear. Regardless of her scars, Zélee thinks that her emotional pain will be permanent anyway. And Zane enters, cowering and uncharacteristically quiet. The sight pains Zélee, and her brother, he says that he broke his promise to protect her and that what happened is his fault. She tries to convince him otherwise. Also disturbing is the fact that Zélee can't seem to access magic, which means that she won't be able to perform the ceremony with the 3 artifacts. She wants desperately to hide this, though. Amari enters too, and she and Zane reveal that the solstice is the very next day. You got to perform the ritual at the solstice. They're still very far from the sacred site and possibly too far to reach it in time. The thought of losing magic overwhelms Zélee with memories of the raid because she feels as if she's losing her mother all over again. Zane says that they have to find Baba and escape Orisha. And Amari agrees, saying that they will regroup and find another way to fight. But one of the boys from the bar bursts into the tent, angered by their words. He says, "People have sacrificed their lives for them. Now is not the time to give up. If they go to the port city of Jimeta and take a boat to the island rather than traveling further overland, they may be able to make the deadline for the ceremony. But it's too dangerous to go to Jimeta, a city of thieves and outlaws." Conflicted, Zélee attempts to appeal to the Sky Mother in prayer, but feels nothing. She feels abandoned by the gods, and because she knows she can't perform the ritual if she can't do the magic, she feels like she's letting everyone down. However, she wants to keep fighting, even though her connection seems to be severed. Zélee now fully believes that the Sky Mother chose her for this mission, and she wants to follow through. She tells the others they're going, and they're going to win. Chapter 72. The group arrives at Jimeta, on the edge of a cliff over the ocean. There's no guards in Jimeta, but there's no laws there either. Crazy. Zélee fears the mercenaries are hiding in every nook and cranny. This is the only place in Orisha where it is possible to live outside the long reach of the king's monarchy. Okay. Continuing, chapter 72. They arrive at a cave where one of the boys knows a mercenary who can help them. He has a fast ship that may be able to get them to the island to perform the ceremony just in time. Only one person can enter that lair. Everyone agrees it should be Zélee because of her magic. Racked with guilt, she agrees without revealing the truth about her magic. She sends a prayer up to the gods. Zélee walks down a long passage into a cave until she comes to a central area where men and women are gathered around a fire. They're all armed and masked, mercenaries. She approaches their leader and is shocked to see that it is Rowan, the foreign pickpocket from that diviner settlement. Rowan says that she was unwise to enter the lair unguarded. Can she trust him? When Zélee says she needs some men to help her sail to a mystical vanishing island to restore magic, they just laugh. One mercenary places a hand on Zélee's back to remove her, spending spasms of pain through her scars. She flips him onto the ground and rams her staff into him. Rowan He's quietly amused. Zélie says she can't pay Rowan, but he would be helping achieve the will of the gods. As for his men, Zélie says that they'll be employed by the future queen of Orisha. Grinning, Rowan agrees to the deal. Chapter 73. Zélie and Rowan's ship cuts across the water. Zélie raises a prayer to the gods, but she still can't feel them. Still, she thinks of all she's learned since she left home. Suddenly, a fleet of warships appear on the horizon. Zélie squeezes Amari's hand in fear. Under Rowan's advice, Zélie says they should try to take the nearest warship and keep heading for the island. Zélie prepares to fight, but Rowan assures her that the mercenaries can handle it on their own. Looking to the large armored ship, Zélie and Amari are skeptical. Rowan asks what limit he and his men can go to. That is, if they can kill the crew of the warship. Zélie holds them back. Too much blood has already been spilled. When is violence really necessary? The author seems to be asking us to question. Working quickly and quietly, Rowan launches a rope to the ship via crossbow, and he and his men shimmy aboard. Within minutes, they've bound the crew of the ship, tied them up. Rowan jokes that he's simply carrying out the will of the gods, and they speed on towards the island. Chapter 74. Inan can't stop thinking about Zélie. He can't shake the feeling that he's lost her forever. Saren approaches and he sees that his son, Anan, is wavering. Anan looks to the skies, wishing he could turn to the gods for guidance. Anan feels conflicted, drawn to abandon his mission in order to protect Zélie. He wants to follow his heart, but he feels a sense of loyalty to his responsibilities as a prince. His father, if not any longer to his father directly. He knows that turning towards the gods would give him a sense of connection and comfort. But again, he defers to his family's norms, which require that he reject religion. The Magi. Saren surprises his son Anan by saying that he too wavered and was uncertain once. As a young prince, Saren says he watched as the monarchy considered a proposal to integrate leaders of the Magi clans into the nobility of the court. Bring the Magi into the kingdom? Saren's father dreamed of such a government, one of unification and harmony. Saren's first wife, too, urged support of the referendum. Choosing love over duty, Saren says, he honored his wife's wishes and supported the movement. But then, he says, he realized the Magi just wanted the power to conquer the nobles. Hearing his words, Inan pictures the death and destruction he witnessed at Gombe fortress. Saren says that Anan too must now choose duty and kingdom before himself. And Saren presents Anan with his sword, telling him that sacrificing his heart will make him a noble king. Secretly, Anan thinks that he must choose Orisha over Zélie. He says he knows how they can get the scroll back. Chapter 75. Whose side is Anan going to be on? In the captain's quarters of the stolen warship, Zélie tries to sleep, but memories of her torture are too terrifying and painful. She runs on deck to find Rowan, who has beaten the crew of the ship. Sickened, Zélie turns toward the sea, not wanting to think about more violence. Rowan shows her a series of scars on his arm from when his men were killed in front of him. And captors carved a new line in his skin for each one that died. The scars were inflicted on him in his homeland, a place called Satori. From experience, Rowan knows that acts of violence can be physically and emotionally debilitating. Zélie feels this too, as well as an echo of the desire for revenge that once motivated her. But her desire now is to combat injustice more broadly by restoring power to the oppressed, rather than specifically targeting those who have directly hurt her. Rowan jokes again about being chosen by the gods, but he is clearly at least a little serious, believing in the gods, even as he jokes about them. He says it seems like too much of a coincidence that he and Zélie met twice and are now working together. And he also tells her that talking to someone else is the best way to start healing her wounds. Zélie realizes he's right. She doesn't want to be alone. She enters Amari's room, and Amari greets her with a smile. Chapter 76. Now, Amari combs Zélie's tangled hair. They talk about their respective mothers, memories of having their hair brushed as young children. And Amari says that Zélie can tell her anything. Zélie admits that She used to think Amari was weak because she was obviously so afraid of her father, King Saren. But now, as Elise says, beginning to cry, she too feels like Saren is an inescapable force in her head. Check out the reading guide for chapter 76. Now, Zéli's tears here make Amari choke up too, just thinking about all the pain that her family and her father have caused. She apologizes that it took both her and Anan so long to realize just how wrong Saren was and to begin to right his wrongs. She thinks of Binta, too, her old best friend, in her head, and apologizes to her for not being able to do more. Amari reflects again on her decision to break away from her family and fight the injustices they've perpetrated, a decision that is continually reinforced as she observes firsthand the suffering that Saren has caused. She does not feel loyal to her father, but instead to her own sense of what is right, and only wishes that she could have come to that conclusion sooner before so many were hurt or killed. Amari says she's seen a change in herself, where before she cowered at the thought of the king and the damage he could inflict on her, when she saw him in the fortress at Gombe, she was ready to strike with her blade. Amari says that Zéli's harsh criticisms when they first met are part of what made her brave. Be brave, Amari. It was the first time she thought she could be anything other than a scared and obedient little princess. Zéli, too, will find a way to break free, Amari tells her. Looking down, Zéli admits something else. She can no longer do magic. She worries that no one will be able to do the ritual now, and her words make her stomach sink. Amari feels a wave of fear and briefly thinks that maybe they should turn back. But she thinks of all that has happened since she left home. She has overpowered fear and her father, and everyone has beaten the odds to be here. She tells Zéli that the gods don't make mistakes. No matter what, they have to try to do the ceremony. Chapter 77. The ship approaches the island, which materializes in the morning light. By interrogating the guards, Rowan gained useful information about where the soldiers will be stationed. By sneaking onto the island in stolen uniforms, the group hopes to maintain an element of surprise, ambush. Zéli addresses the assembled group. Her heart is in her throat, knowing that she may not be able to complete the ceremony at all. Still, she knows she must try to bolster her friends. She tells them that their reasons for fighting far outweigh their fears. They've all been wronged by the guards and the monarchy, and now is the time to settle the score. Everyone cheers. Chapter 78. As soon as they set foot in the island, Zéli feels the thrum of the gods' presence, though not her magic. The island is overrun with soldiers, but in their disguises, the group is able to push past them with relative ease. The soldiers are expecting a Magi army. A fog clings to everything, helping to obscure the group's movements. Zéli thinks it's an indication that the gods are on their side, rooting for them. She also thinks about Amari seeking her out in the market in Lagos. Please, you have to get me out of here. It was another sign. As they approach the temple in the center of the island, Rowan sends a group of his men back to the shoreline to cause a distraction on the beach. As they leave, all Zéli can think is that she can't bear to have any more blood on her hands. As an explosion on the beach draws their attention, guards stream out of the temple to assess the threat. Is violence necessary? Zéli and her friends and the mercenaries enter the temple, decorated with beautiful images of the gods. They enter the central dome, where images of the gods flank a central pillar, which has an indentation for the sunstone. Zéli prays to the gods, and she prays to return her magic. Amari hands her the artifacts, and she prepares to attempt the ceremony. At that moment, Saren and his men jump out from hiding places around the room, and Anan is there too, holding a magicite blade. Baba is with them. Chapter 79. I am so serious, guys. Read in the book. Okay, did you already read it? I'm on chapter 79. It says, at the sight of her father, Zéli had crumbled. They have to surrender. She admits that her magic is gone and hasn't returned. She is bitterly angry at the gods. She thinks of everyone who has died for her in vain. Was it hopeless? Was it pointless? But she can't let Baba die. In the moment when she sees her father, Zéli's resolve to stick to her personal goals and mission dissolves. She returns to the mindset she had before the quest began, placing the safety of her family first and rejecting the gods for putting her in such incredibly difficult situations. Curse the gods. Anon steps forward to trade Baba for the artifacts. Zélie drops the sunstone and the scroll and an ordinary dagger, realizing Anon has never seen the real bone dagger. Her father asks why she gave up, and Zélie says she had to. They begin to walk away. Suddenly, an arrow pierces Baba's chest. In this climactic moment, Zélie realizes that her family still comes before her personal mission. Check your reading guide. Is this the climax? Page 500, chapter 80. Zélie remembers when her mother was killed in the raid, when she swore never to let anything like this happen again. But now it has, and as the life drains from her father, arrow through his chest, Zélie is filled with images of Baba's life. It's the greatest blood magic, and it summons her powers back. Zélie feels once again that she has let down her responsibility to protect her family members, which is a deeply painful feeling. However, the depth of this pain also allows her to reconnect with her magic, showing the way that her faith is connected to sacrifice. As the guards approach Zélie, she sends her magic arrowing at them. All she wants is blood and death to avenge her fallen family. But she hears Baba's voice telling her that revenge is not the path. She must fix things. She needs to restore magic so that the Magi can finally be treated with respect, so they can ward off violence with the threat of their own power. Zélie feels tempted to fight the death of her father with more death, but on some level, she knows that such tactics are self-defeating. Nor will they bring her peace. Instead, she needs to focus on her broader aim of restoring equality to the kingdom and giving the Magi the power to fight their oppressors. Is violence ever really necessary? If so, when? These are the questions the author is asking us to consider. And I think over and over we get this reinforced. Ever? Is it ever really necessary? Maybe, but when? When do we decide that violence must be? Okay, chapter 81. Zélie has turned her deadly focus on Inan. He aches with her heartbreak, but he focuses on his goal of ending magic. Has he betrayed her? How many times has he possibly betrayed her? Could this be maybe 3 times? Could there be 3 times that he's possibly done this? He can't let Orisha burn. He seizes the scroll and he tries to focus his magic on it to destroy it, but it doesn't work. He thinks that Zélie's magic could destroy the scroll. Anon has internalized his father's message about duty and adapted it to his current situation. Instead of bending to his own desire to help Zélie, he believes in putting the kingdom first by fighting against her. He believes that if anyone has the power of magic, it will lead to more violence. Inan runs towards Zélie, yelling that it is all her fault. He says, it's her fault Baba died. Angered, Zélie sends a bolt of magic toward him. He holds the scroll in front of him, and he watches as the magic rips it apart. Zélie screams. Saren turns to his son with pride. You gotta read this. It's so powerful. Okay, at the end of chapter 81. A mercenary approaches King Saren from behind. Without thinking, Inan kills the mercenary with his magic. His father's horrified, especially when he sees the mercenary is covered with the same blue crystals that Kaya was. Had Kaya and Saren been kissing? Did they have an affair? What happened at the beginning of chapter 3? What was in the bedroom at the end of chapter 3? Now Saren stabs his sword into Anon. Anon pleads with his father, thinking of all the pain he's caused in his father's name. He can't let it all be for nothing. But Saren says Anon is no son of his. Seeing that his son is able to do magic, Saren does not hesitate to commit violence. For him, the classification of Magi as dangerous and inferior is so powerful that it's not even swayed when the Magi in question is his own son. Saren's attack reminds Anon of what he's slowly been realizing, that his morals do not align with his father. No. And he knows that his father's tactics have caused devastation throughout the kingdom. Meanwhile, Saren believes that the duty to the kingdom and his own hungry quest for power outweighs any responsibility towards his family members. Chapter 82. Amari slashes through the guards alongside Zane. The stain of bloodshed is difficult to bear, but necessary. She tries not to think about the fact that she's fighting and killing her own guards. Once again, the heroes must use violence in service of their broader goal of bringing peace. Amari is uncomfortable with that paradox, but she also feels like it is necessary. Amari sees Anan crumble, pierced by Saren's sword. Amari runs toward her father. The king says that the gods have cursed him with children who are traitors. Amari says that it is his own blood that is the curse, and she's ready to end it. When is violence really necessary? Chapter 83. Amari thinks about all the fighting Saren forced her and Anan to do as children, pitting them against each other so that they would be stronger than his first children. Amari says that Saren raised her to fight monsters, but only now is she realizing that he is the biggest monster. She fights him with her sword, feeling strength and courage she didn't know she had. Read this in the book, chapter 83. It's a powerfully exciting scene. She fights her father with her sword. But then she thinks that if she kills him, she's no better than him. As she stumbles past him, Saren slashes his blade across her back. She already had scars there. Amari's come to an important realization. It is possible for her to break free of her father and his many crimes, and to avenge those crimes by fighting back against him directly. She is torn, however, about using violence to that end. To Amari, killing Saren feels like she is simply perpetuating the cycle of anger and killing that he tried to force her into from a young age. Saren has no such hesitations. Okay, Amari realizes that Saren does not care about spilling the blood of his own children. This is his choice. She plunges her sword into his chest. Although tears fill her eyes, she knows she has done the right thing. Has she? She tells her father this will make her a far stronger queen, echoing his old refrains. Realizing that Saren will always place his own power above his family and always resort to violence, Amari decides that in this case, violence is justified. To end more killing and oppression, she will kill. Chapter 84. Ellie tries to channel energy from the ashes of the scroll, but to no avail. She tries to remember the incantation inscribed on it, but barely can. Light begins to fill the chamber, a sign that the solstice is happening. Okay, the sun is in the right position. She tries to reach out to the spirits of the temple priests for help, but all she feels is Baba and the magic in her own blood. The sudden loss of Zali's father is so devastating that it's difficult for Zali to focus on what she needs to do. Focus. Without him, her father, she feels both personally lost and disconnected from her faith and magic, just as she did when her mother died. Zali realizes that there may be another way to reach the Sky Mother. She thinks about drawing a connection through all her ancestors, through her blood. The mercenaries are still fighting against all odds, and so should she, Zili thinks. Zili picks up the Sunstone and thinks not of magic, but of the blood and bone, connecting her to the past. She thinks of her mother. She slashes open her palms with the bone dagger and presses them to the Sunstone, pleading to her ancestors as she does so. She feels the power of her ancestors, both Magi and Kosidan, flowing through her. She feels their energy pulsing through her. The Sunstone shatters and light fills the room as she feels magic coursing through every being, connecting them all. Instead of thinking of magic herself, Zili thinks of the community of diviners who support each other through their magic and practices. This connection is actually extremely powerful. She also realizes that this community extends beyond the mere connections of blood. Non-Magi who have helped and loved her are also part of the wider family of ancestors who have helped her get to this point. Chapter 85. The last chapter. Zili thinks of her mother as she floats through blackness to her mother's voice. She sees a vision of Oya, who says that she has always been by Zili's side and always will be. But when she realizes it's not Oya, but her own mother, Mama tells Zili that Baba is there now, at peace. Zili says they must bring Zayn there so they can all be together. But Mama says it is not his time, nor is it Zili's. Arisha still needs her. The blackness begins to fade as Zili yells that she cannot leave her mother again. Okay? As it says at the end of the book, okay, from the book there. Mama's grip on me tightens as the voices grow louder, almost deafening now. Creases wrinkle across her smooth forehead. He doesn't belong here, my love, not yet. But Mama, neither do you. The singing voices blare so loudly I can't tell if they're praises or screams. My insides twist as Mama's words hit. Mama, no, please, Zell. I cling to her again, fear choking my throat. I want this. I want to stay here with you and Baba. I can't go back to that world. I won't survive that pain. Zell, Orisha still needs you. I don't care. I need you. Her words grow hurried as her light begins to fade with a chorus of heavenly voices. All around us, the blackness brightens, drowning in a wave of light. Mama, don't leave me. Please, Mama. Not again. Her dark eyes sparkle as tears fall, their warmth landing on my face. It's not over, little Zell. It's only just begun. That's the end of chapter 85. The epilogue. Zilly opens her eyes. She realizes she's at sea with Amari Zane and Rowan. She asks if they were successful in bringing magic back. Everyone is silent. And she takes their silence to mean no. But Amari shakes her head and holds out a hand, swirling with magic. Amari's hair now has a white streak through it. Here's the text from the end. There is a sequel, and Tomi Adeyemi's working on a third sequel too. She gives an author's note about some of the violence from the last couple of years, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, that inspired her to start writing this book. She said, I shed many tears before I wrote this book, many tears as I revised it. And even as it sits in your hands now, I know that I will shed tears again. Although writing giant lion airs and performing sacred rituals might be in the realm of fantasy, all the pain, fear, sorrow, and loss in this book is real. Children of Blood and Bone was written during a time where I kept on turning on the news and seeing stories of unarmed black men, women, and children being shot by the police. I felt afraid and angry and helpless, but this book was the one thing that made me feel like I could do something about it. Okay, she goes on to explain more the very last 2 or 3 pages in the author's note. Okay, you got your reading guide, the last one, and on the last page it goes over some of the final project options that you have. If you got questions, let me know. All right, we've got all these resources on It's Learning, turning in the final reading guide, and you've got the final project instructions. Okay, I put them right here. They're also on the lessons for week 5 and 6 there. You can check them all out with more detailed instructions for the final project. Hope you've enjoyed this. This is Mr. Spencer, signing off.